Hi, welcome to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. Today is Thursday, February 19th, and I'm Jessica Steinberg. I'm speaking today with diplomatic correspondent Lazar Berman. Hi, Lazar.
Hey, Jessica. Good to be here with you
In the studio.
in our, not brand new, but new Jerusalem studio.
New Jerusalem studio. Newish for me, less new for you. On to the headlines of the day. We're hearing reports of the biggest buildup of U.S. air power in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion that launched the Iraq War, alongside the ongoing U.S. negotiations with Iran over its nuclear program. We'll talk about all of that, as well as the extremely brief visit of U.S. right-wing commentator Tucker Carlson in Israel on Wednesday. So stay with us.
ביחד. מההתחלה.
בשם השף נעשה ונצליח.
אתם הטבחים חושבים שאתם מחזיקים את העולם בביצים. זה לא טוב לך מה שאתה עושה. מה אתה יודע מה טוב לי, מה לא טוב לי? סרוויס! לא יוצאת לי מהראש. שקרן. מה את רוצה ממני? חי.
Okay, so Lazar, Iran, as I said to you, Iran. We just have a lot. The headlines right now in our live blog, everywhere else, are all about the dozens of U.S. aircraft and aircraft carriers in the region. That indicates in the headlines that you have written a longer campaign, certainly could be expected, certainly longer than last June, which was the 12-day war. There are the negotiations, but then we have President Trump saying, be wary, Iran, because it doesn't look like the negotiations are going anywhere. Makes sense of it for us because, of course, here on the ground, Israelis are, in the supermarket buying up many cookies and pretzels and water and tuna fish.
Because nothing defends from Iranian missiles like tuna fish.
Right.
But this is a very serious issue.
It is a very serious issue.
There is a tendency over the past weeks, especially in Israel, but also around the world, everyone who's covering it, to every little piece of news or unsourced leak to put that as headlines and to kind of get ahead of ourselves. The truth is we don't know when this is going to happen. I would say that Trump doesn't necessarily know when exactly it's going to happen, but what we can say is that there are more and more indications that it's going to happen sooner rather than later. Trump certainly, as he does, gives a chance for talks to go somewhere.
Right.
But that doesn't mean he takes a similar approach, let's say the Obama administration, where they kind of sanctify talks. It's basically whatever talks can do. The best we can do is talks.
Leave it there.
Yeah, is what we're going to do. For Trump, we have a goal. More than a goal. We have a demand. If you want to meet our demands through talks, great. If not, we have other options. And this, if indeed he does move forward, I believe this would be the 7th military attack in his first year plus in office.
Quite a number.
Yeah. So this would be a second attack on Iran, but the other places he struck: Yemen, Venezuela, Syria, Nigeria. So there's been plenty of willingness to use.
We know that he moves forward with it and fulfills what he says on that front.
No, not necessarily, but then you can look at, let's say, Greenland, right, where there are threats, and now it doesn't look like he's going to move forward on any sort of attempt to gain more access there. So we do know that, first of all, it looks like the talks that the Trump administration has been involved in. There was the second round in Geneva on Tuesday. Does not seem to have been anything. The Iranians were pretty positive about it, that there was some sort of framework that they're moving toward. All the anonymous leaks to U.S. press has been otherwise, that there was just nothing there. And therefore, the timeline seemed to be speeding up. There is a lot of U.S. military hardware moving to the region. So you already have the USS Abraham Lincoln that has F-35s.
For a while already.
Yeah, it's been there. It's hanging out in the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean, pretty close to the Iranian border, and 3 destroyers there as well. That gives them some offensive power, of course, and also the ability to protect the aircraft carrier. The Iranians have started putting out these like AI images of aircraft carriers on the bottom. They understand the best thing that they could do would be to hit or even sink one of these ships, especially the aircraft carrier. That is a goal. So the U.S. has to make sure they have a lot of defensive assets in place around the carrier
carrier.
group and the carrier itself. Now, there's also a question of how much offensive power the U.S. has. If you think about Israel was able to carry out a 12-day campaign that certainly stretched its Air Force to the limit, but it has hundreds of warplanes. The aircraft carrier has dozens. There are a few dozens more that have been moved into the region in Jordan and some other places. And then there are long-range bombers that can reach from Diego Garcia in India or can even fly from Missouri, bomb, and go back.
Right.
It's pretty crazy to think about.
That is.
Therefore, they're moving the USS Gerald Ford, which is the most advanced carrier in the U.S. fleet, from the Caribbean, where it was involved in the Venezuela operation. The last I checked, it was kind of in the Azores off of West Africa.
Uh-huh.
It seems to be going into the Mediterranean. It could stop off the coast of Israel and be part of the defensive effort primarily
For Israel.
But it could also strike from there, but it's not that close as we know. Or aircraft carriers can certainly transit the Suez Canal. It's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It could transit through there, go through the Red Sea, and then join up with the USS Abraham Lincoln.
Would it need sort of permission from Egypt to do that?
Yeah, but they're going to give it permission. They're not going to stop American warships
Just
from going.
curious.
Absolutely, we'll get permission. So it could link up, and then you would have two carrier strike groups in the ocean off of Iran that would certainly bring a lot of firepower there. That doesn't mean that the campaign is going to be long. The reason why it certainly gives it the ability to carry out an extended campaign.
But why? So why is there also that headline of it seems like it would have possibly be a longer
Because there are people leaking, I believe it was senior White House officials to Axios, to Barack Ravid, who were saying this is going to be a longer campaign, basically like a war from the air, so an extended air campaign, and not a targeted strike like the Maduro thing in Venezuela or even the 12-day war. That's why, and if you combine that piece of evidence with this, then it does make sense, but that the very buildup does not necessarily determine that. So there is absolutely that possibility. And then there's the question of what is Israel's role in it.
Right.
From what I understand, last week's meeting, Netanyahu asked for three things. He said, we want permission to strike even if there is a deal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what the answer was there, but there's not going to be a deal anyway, so that wasn't so important. There was...
Wait, back up to that. There's not going to be a deal anyway.
There's not going to be in these talks. I think everyone understands they're not going anywhere, right? So
Okay.
The request: do we still have freedom of action to strike Iran if there's a threat, even if there's a deal? It's kind of a moot point. Then there was a request from Israel: can we strike immediately? From what I understand, and the Trump administration asked Israel to put it off, and let's see if the second round
What happens?
Yeah, and for now it seems like America's in the lead. And then the second one is, if America strikes, what role can Israel have? So it seems like Israel is going to have a role. It's not clear whether what it could look like. Are they going to split up?
Defensive.
Well, there'll certainly be a defensive role if Israel gets struck, right? Are they going to split up the country? Is it going to be the U.S. starts, and then only if one missile flies toward Israel, that will be the excuse for Israel to get involved? Certainly intelligence from Israel is going to the Americans, every single day in a very coordinated fashion. I would even say that Israeli intelligence on Iran is better than U.S. intelligence. You can see the evidence of that in the 12-day war. The fact that Israel knew where these leaders were and were able to take them out and had people on the ground. So I think that, I'm sure that has actually happened. But the nature of the Israeli involvement, if and when this happens, is up for question. But if I was betting, I would say it would be significant. But that remains to be seen.
Okay. Anything else you want to add on Iran as people, as on the more local front?
Yeah.
People stock up and get nervous and think about the holiday of Purim and, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of messages from friends. What's going to happen?
You do.
Listen, I don't know what's going to happen. If I knew what was happening, there would be a major leak somewhere, and I would tell everyone. My job is to tell you what I know, not to hide it from myself. As we look into the coming months, I think there's certainly a reasonable possibility that we will be involved in a war with Iran. Of course, the more the Americans are involved, the better it is for or Israel's home front, especially if there's that focus that's very important for Israel of hitting the missiles and especially the launchers to take out those capabilities.
Right.
That's part of the defensive effort. And then there's the actual defensive effort when the missiles come here. We saw last time that some get through. That's inevitable.
They do.
And I'm sure when this starts, there'll be a lot of focus on, listening to the instructions from the home front command. There already have been some preparations made quietly behind the scenes.
Right. Nothing preliminary, very preliminary.
Right. There haven't been instructions on local shelters to open up, clean up.
Right.
But, at their levels, they're certainly preparing for this possibility.
Okay, let us take a quick break. And when we're back, let's talk about the visit of U.S. commentator Tucker Carlson. Very, very brief visit to Israel yesterday. So stay with us.
While Israeli reservists were serving, the financial reality at home began to change. Salaries were reduced or lost, businesses were forced to pause, expenses continued to pile up. That's why Latet has created a dedicated relief fund for families of reservists facing financial hardship because of the war. Over the next 6 months, Latet will provide monthly food and hygiene assistance to help families regain stability and return to everyday life. These families stood for all of us. Now it's our time to stand with them. Donate today.
The very popular U.S. right-wing commentator Tucker Carlson flies in yesterday to Israel to interview U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee, claims he was detained by Israeli security staff at the airport. Here's my first question. Did he actually even leave the airport?
Nope, did not leave the airport. I don't know if you remember, there was before they built the new terminal, there was this other older terminal that has become a VIP terminal. I've been there a couple times to interview people, but they have like a bunch of private rooms. It's very nice if you can get
Set
there.
up for this.
It's for this. It's for VIPs to quietly fly in and not have to deal with
getting through
the peasants like us.
Yes.
Even though when I fly with the prime minister, I also don't like to deal with the peasants. So I guess peasants like you. That's what they don't want to do.
Thanks.
But if you are able to get there, it's very nice. There's food all over the place. So that's where they did it. So Carlson, remember he attacked Senator Ted Cruz. You don't even know about Iran and you're criticizing them and instruct them. So Carlson, who doesn't seem to know a ton about Israel, he just knows enough to criticize Israel in very problematic fashion, didn't even have the intellectual curiosity or the personal bravery to go around the country and, take in some of these things. So he stayed in an airport. I'm sure in the future he'll claim he visited Israel, but that's where he did, and then he left. There was no sort of engagement with Israel.
But why did he actually come?
Yes.
Talk us through that.
So Carlson, he started in MSNBC, and then he was a very popular Fox News host. He was basically pushed out into 2023. I believe it was about some things he said about the elections. But since he's gone out on his own, he's a very popular independent podcast channel. It really started in 2024, where he's been hammering in the guise of this isolationist thing on Israel. And he asks all the time, why are we always talking about Israel? We should be talking about America first. Well, he's always talking about Israel.
Right, bringing it up.
And it's not just Israel. Now his thing that he's really latched onto is that Israel oppresses, especially the Jews, oppress Christians, right? So he talks to kind of these Palestinian liberation theology priests who have a very one-sided and slanted view about Israel. And they say, their argument is that Israel is intentionally oppressing Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank and then, in Israel itself.
He's speaking to people who are in the States or who are
both, but he
place.
speaks to Palestinians. Most recently, and the one that really led up to this, a couple weeks ago, he spoke to the Anglican patriarch here. He spoke to him just in Jordan near the Jordan River.
This is right up your alley, Lazar.
This is exactly up my alley.
Everything coming together.
Yeah, for sure. And the Anglican priest was he wasn't as strident as Carlson. Carlson kind of took it in that direction. But they talked about, priests and Christian tourists being spit on in the old city, which is a problem.
Yep.
Which the president and the prime minister and the police have all spoken out against and acted against, but they haven't shut it down, and that's certainly not okay. The graffiti on some churches, things like that.
So very specific, very
right. And out of that, he the church in Gaza getting hit during the war,
right,
creates this narrative that Israel is intentionally oppressing Christians and is the oppressor of Christians. I'll just note that when Carlson was in Saudi Arabia about a month ago, Saudi Arabia is a place where you can't worship
any other.
Yeah, there's no churches officially. Right. You can't do any sort of Christian worship in public. He said, I feel very safe here as a Christian. Mm-hmm. So this is a very dishonest look at the Middle East.
Playing in different parties against one another.
I think he's just trying to portray Israel using these terms that the Jews, this is, he won't say this, but this is why it has so much resonance, that the Jews are really a threat to Christians, and therefore good Christians come out against, he's not going to say Jews, but they push back against Israel. And that's why there's this attack on this Christian Zionism, saying that these Christian supporters of Israel they're not really, this is not really Christian dogma or teaching, and they have perverted it, and they're supporting Israel, which means they're supporting the Jews, and they are betraying Christianity. That's what you'll see. So obviously, Ambassador Huckabee, a veteran friend of Israel, leading Christian Zionist, a Baptist minister, ambassador. Right, and the U.S. ambassador here said, I hear you chatting about me a lot, why don't you come here and talk to me? I spoke to someone who was a friend of both of them last night, and she's here in Israel, and Melissa Francis is her name. She used to be a Fox News host, and she said that Carlson told her about a month ago in Florida that Trump asked him to lower the flames on this intra-Republican party fighting. It's not doing good things for the Republican Party ahead of midterms. It's just helping the Democrats. So he asked everyone to tamp things down, and that's part of Carlson's willingness to have this conversation.
Got it.
Now I haven't seen the footage yet. She was there in the room, and she told me that it was a very, emotionally charged conversation, but that who's better than Huckabee to point out where Carlson is off. Huckabee knows, Bible chapter and verse,
right.
And he's more than capable of explaining why it's in America's security interest, diplomatic interest, and for Christians, or at least Christian Zionists, why it is a biblical imperative to support a Jewish state here in the Holy Land. We'll see when it comes out. I'm looking forward to watching it. I will just note that I think last night, or maybe this morning, Carlson put out another episode about Israel oppressing Palestinian Christians. So he's still hitting this. He's not listening to Trump. He continues to bang this drum. There's people that say, "Oh, it's Qatari money behind him." I don't know, but certainly.
Well, what about the security, so to speak, incident? Did she have? Yeah, I mean, if he wasn't even necessarily passing through, I imagine, regular passport control, obviously.
Right, but there is some sort of passport control there. He says he was detained, and it was bizarre, and his business partner was pulled into another room. The Israeli Airport Authority came out very quickly. You said, we do. I mean, if you've flown through, they talk to you. They take your passport, they look at it, they say, where are you going? What do you do?
Did you pack your suitcase?
Yeah, it seemed like that type of thing. And of course, given his the way he likes to spin things, he wants to make it look like as this weird attack on him. And Huckabee himself also says that, hey, I fly through the VIP thing as well. They even, with a diplomatic passport, and they even asked me a couple questions. That's what they do. So I think this, you can draw your own conclusions about how much this was done in good faith and what narrative Carlson was trying to portray here.
All right, we'll wait and see how the interview looks and sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Lazar, for being on the Daily Briefing.
Thank you, Jessica. I'll see you next week, I hope.
I imagine so. And thanks to you for listening to the Times Visual Daily Briefing. Stay tuned for tomorrow's installment. This episode is produced by Ari Schlacht. If you ever have comments about this episode or others, you can always email us at podcast@timesvisual.com. Until next time, take care, be well, and Shabbat Shalom. Have a good weekend.